Say that his love is a bubbling. Don't you know that his love is a bubbling over in my heart? Well, it's in my heart.
Finding 2 Corinthians chapter 10. Hear the words of Paul. Look at verse 12 follow. He writes, "For we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves, but they, measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. We, however, will not boast beyond measure, but within the limits of the sphere or field which God appointed us, a sphere which especially includes you. For we are not overextending ourselves as though our authority did not extend to you. For it was to you that we came with the gospel of Christ, not boasting of things beyond measure, that is, in other men's labors, but having hope that in your faith is increased, we shall be greatly enlarged by you in our sphere or field, to preach the gospel in the regions beyond you, and not to boast in another man's sphere or field of accomplishment. But he who glories, let him glory in the Lord. For not he who commends himself is approved, but whom the Lord commends." I invite you to read after me verse number 12 and 13, if you would. "For we dare not class ourselves,
For we dare not class ourselves,
or compare ourselves
or compare ourselves
with those who commend themselves,
with those who commend themselves,
but they, measuring themselves
measuring themselves
by themselves,
by themselves,
and comparing themselves
comparing themselves
among themselves,
among themselves,
are not wise.
not wise.
We, however,
We, however,
will not boast beyond measure,
will not boast beyond measure,
but within the limits
within the limits
of the sphere
of the sphere
which God appointed us,
which God appointed us,
a sphere
a sphere
which especially
especially
includes you.
includes you.
Amen. As we look at this pericope of text, I would invite you to look at Cornelia and ask them, do you brag like you've done?
We brag like we've done.
Amen.
Brag like you done.
Do you brag like you're done? You may remember that as we have been studying from 2 Corinthians, that the first 8 chapters, Paul talks about the relationship they have with God and how he is in their favor. It's his chance to encourage them and to put confidence back inside them. But beginning in chapter 9, he really begins to address more the people who actually caused trouble in that congregation by talking about, you can tell me. You're the best standard, aren't you? Don't we often act like we the best standard for what right really is? That somehow the whole world would really be better if folk really were a little bit more like you? That your marriage would be better? And your mate just acted more like you? That your kids would be better. They just acted more like you. That maybe even on your job, if your employer handled it like you handled it, everybody would get along better and be a better place to work. And if the other employees handled their job like you handle yours, everybody would love to work at that place. Matter of fact, if folk just drove like you drove,
Mercy.
everything will be better. We have a tendency to believe that we are the best standard. That if everybody was just a little more like me, aren't you actually really pretty much self-satisfied? I know you ain't got it all together, and don't say you're perfect. You know you ain't perfect. We know you got issues, but although you got your issues, don't you really feel that maybe if just folk in the church acted a little bit more like you, wouldn't it make everything better? We'd understand each other better, can operate. Don't you sometimes really feel, if you were honest with yourself, that you're the standard, and that's why even when leadership expects something out of you or call you to do something, you don't want to feel like you got to be made to do nothing. After all, if you've already arrived past everybody, why you got to follow somebody? That's the reason why your kids, when they move from being, as they move into the teenage years, they move from dependence to independence. And as they transfer from dependence to independence, they begin to think, why should I do what you say do? You ain't no bigger than me no more. Obviously, you ain't smarter than me no more. I know it's so what? The reason people don't follow a standard is because they believe they become one off of themselves. And I want you to see here, even inside of here, most of us get caught up somehow thinking, believing that we're smarter and that we're more clever, that you see things clearer and better than everybody else. If the leadership in the church just handles stuff like you suggested, if everybody just followed your idea and allowed the pattern that you would set to be the standard, the whole world would be better if everybody was just a little bit more like you. Because it's easy to begin to think that we're the best standard for how things should be. You know, there's a story of a man in an airplane. There's a plane flying and a pilot, a preacher, a little boy, about 9 or 10 years of age, and a very intelligent, smart attorney were flying. And the pilot started having some trouble with the plane. And next thing, the little pilot ran toward the back and grabbed a parachute. He said, "Guys, I'm sorry. This plane's going down. I don't know what else to do." He threw on the parachute and jumped out the plane. The smart man, he stood up, he said to the preacher, "Preacher," and to the little boy, he said, "Listen, I'm one of the smartest men in the world right now, and they need me. The world can't survive without me, so I'm sorry, but I gotta go." He grabbed the parachute and jumped out, leaving only one left. The preacher saw the one parachute, said to the little boy, he said, "Well, son," he said, I'm fine to go to meet my maker." He said, "So, you know what, you go ahead and take the last parachute and get out of here." The little boy said, "No, we got 2 parachutes left." He said, "No, there wasn't enough for all of us. There's only one." He said, "No, there's 2 parachutes left." He said, "The smartest man in the world just jumped out of my backpack." There's a danger thinking you wise in your own eyes. Paul warns against the danger of thinking that you're the standard. Because there are people inside this church in Corinth who are actually saying that Paul ain't nobody to act like. You ought to be like me. And I want you to look into this text and understand the danger. He warns that people that operate that way, they are not wise. Wise. The Greek word for wise inside this text literally means to put together. Or well put together. There are folks who get it. See, a lot of things happen in life and in this world that we don't get. Because you don't know the bigger picture of it. About 7 years ago, I think it was, Every Sunday morning at the end of service, I would have Thomas get up and him and I would sing, I need you, you need me, we're all a part of God's body. See, that was the reason we did that. We don't do stuff just to do it. Some folks are like, why every Sunday they got to get up and sing that same song? I get tired of hearing that same song every Sunday. It don't make no kind of sense. Sing the same song. There's a point behind that. We're trying to create an ambiance. We're trying to create an environment. We're trying to create a place where folk feel more connected. And the way to do that, you got to do that through song and through lessons. A couple of years ago, we did a whole series for over a year through what we call the one another passage of the Bible. Why? Because we did the one another passage because we're trying to build a sense of, and we're trying to build a sense of the need we have for each other. That's how you create unity and oneness, by identifying those kind of components. We did a whole lesson through John, preached through John for about a year. Why we preached through John? It wasn't just because we had nothing better to preach. The book of John is a book about faith. You read through John to learn about faith. We preached about John to build faith. We're going through some challenges, and we didn't sit down and say, well, church, here's why we're going through this. We're not going to always give you the bigger picture. But there's a reasoning and a logic behind everything that we do. Right now, this series of 2 Corinthians, it's not by accident. It's not just a book in the Bible. It's about how to be empowered. Why you never quit. Amen. And there were things we're going through at that time and challenges you got right now that you got to understand why you never quit. The key is there's often understanding. Wisdom is the ability to see the bigger picture. Sometimes you never see the bigger picture because folks don't tell you what the bigger picture is. I never planned to live in Indiana.